Congratulations on passing your test! Woo! You're a lawyer! But now let's get into business. On January 8, 2018, an automobile accident occurred at the intersection of Taft and Dallas Streets in Houston, Texas, between a compact car driven by a Mr. Garcia and a tractor-trailer driven by Mrs. Wakefield. Why? Now, the court has asked your accident investigation agency, our agency, to provide a comprehensive analysis of the collision from a physics perspective. Now, you have to put together a formal report to the court that assesses the claims of both of the drivers and determines if either one of them or both of them are at fault. Now, Mr. Garcia claims to have made a full stop at the light before entering the intersection, and that Mrs. Wakefield, the girl on the tractor, did not slow down prior to the collision. Now, the tractor girl, Mrs. Wakefield, claims to have been braking before the collision and that Mr. Garcia did not stop at the flashing red light. Now, the details that we know are that the distance traveled after the collision for the car was 8.2 meters, and before the collision it was 13 meters. Now, the weight of the car is 13,600 newtons. The frictional force was 100 newtons applied, and the normal force was 130 newtons. Now, the maximum acceleration that the car could have reached was 3 meters per second squared, and the angle at which it changed direction was 33 degrees. Now, for the truck, the distance traveled after the collision was 11 meters. Now, the weight of the truck is 69,700 newtons. Now, that is normally larger than the car. And the claimed speed of the truck is 6.7 meters per second. And the frictional coefficient is at least 70% of the cars. So you need to figure that out. And the angle at which it changed direction from where it was initially going was 7 degrees. I don't know why I said it in newtons, but the car weighs at least 3,050 pounds, and the truck weighs at least 16,000 pounds. For a lighter perspective, friction is a contact force exerted by a surface as an object moves across it. Now, there's two types of frictional forces, static friction and kinetic friction. We're going to be focusing on kinetic friction, which is the force that acts between two moving surfaces or objects, which is our car and our truck. Now, you can calculate kinetic friction by multiplying the normal force by the coefficient of kinetic friction. Oh my God, my voice. But in this case, we're dividing the kinetic friction by the normal force in order to get our coefficient for the car and the truck. Whew.
Let's make this quick. To find the speed of each vehicle after the collision, you first need to find the frictional force. Frictional force is found by multiplying the coefficient of friction times the mass in newtons. After finding this force, you can then divide it by the mass in kilograms to find the acceleration of each vehicle. Acceleration is given in meters per second squared, which means for the car it would be 7.5, and for the truck it would be 5.3. You will then plug the accelerations into this formula, which you said you knew when we hired you, to find the velocities of each vehicle. In the end, the velocity for the car will be 11.1 meters per second, and the velocity for the truck will be 10.8 meters per second.
To find speed before the collision, convert pounds to kilograms. Use that times the velocity times the sine angle plus the second velocity times the second mass times the second sine angle, and you need to divide that by the first mass, and that will give you your velocity for the car. If you do that for the second one, you just need to divide it by the second mass for the truck, and that will give you the speed before the collision for that.
Understanding kinetic friction is as important as not lying on your resume. Since friction is what slows down and prevents motion in objects, and kinetic friction is what acts on objects in motion, it's important to understand these topics when talking about car collisions.
So kinematics is the study of the motion of objects, say whatever, and to solve these kinematic equations you have to find the frame of reference or the point of the view of the observer, and this helps assign the initial position of an object and which directions are considered positive and negative. So if the cars are moving right forward, the right direction is positive and the left direction is negative. And there are three major kinetic equations: V equals initial velocity times acceleration times time, and then a triangle X, and then a V2, and then the rest of the equation times a 2 plus a V, and etc.
The law of conservation of momentum is very important when it comes to finding out information in this trial. When discussing this law, it's important to note that the total momentum before the collision is equal to the total momentum after the two objects collide. We use the law of conservation of momentum to determine the velocities of each vehicle before the collision.
In conclusion, in the end, it's really both of y'all's faults for even driving into each other because crashes should not even be happening. So